Targeting and grooming children on the internet for sex. Demand for child sex abuse material is higher than ever, with recent figures showing more than half of all explicit content is hosted in Europe. We've been to London to see how authorities are combating one of the worst web crimes. Enrico Bonner reports.
Cheers.
The recent conviction of Mark Bridger, the murderer of 5-year-old April Jones, is just the latest case in the UK, where investigators found online child sex images had played a major role. According to police, increasingly explicit content is putting more children at risk. They warn exposure to such material can act as an instigator for abuse.
We're seeing much more extreme imagery of offences of children on the internet, and the age of both the victim is getting younger, even down into babies, toddlers, and the age of the offenders are getting younger as well.
The UK-based hotline, the Internet Watch Foundation, has also reported a dramatic rise in child abuse content on the internet. It says the amount of explicit material being posted online increased by 40% in 2012 compared to the year before.
What we need people to do is feel empowered to make a report to us and know that when they do, we're going to take action and get that removed. And where it's hosted in the UK, we go straight to the hosting provider and they typically remove it in 60 minutes, which is incredibly fast.
The borderless nature of the crime has also made it much harder to track sex abusers. Many operate inside internet groups using sophisticated technology and security protocols to hide their activities. Interpol investigator Robert Schilling says the internet has been a game changer.
One of the things that it's done is it's allowed like-minded individuals to be able to connect over the internet, where before they had to engage in really risky behavior in order to contact each other. They would have to fly somewhere, they would have to receive things through the post. This way they can do it in the privacy of their own home and talk to other like-minded individuals, which makes them feel, like they have legitimacy.
Last June, the EU and US launched a global alliance that seeks to improve international cooperation, both in terms of helping victims and catching offenders. Despite that, the different ways national jurisdictions work pose a serious challenge.
I think there are some countries that can look at themselves within how they have capacity and capability around it.
Could you mention some of these countries?
It'd be unfair to mention the countries, but if you were to look yourself, what's the age of consent in certain countries? Are they robust in policing it? Do they have a sex offenders register? And again, Europol are trying to work on a European sex offenders register where we share information but you need the countries to have that register already, and only a handful do.
Never has the need to protect childhood been so unanimously recognised as it is today, but the massive increase of such material exchanged over the internet poses a serious challenge for investigators, especially at a time of austerity. Each European government will have to think carefully about how to best invest resources without losing ground in such a key battle.
Joining me to discuss this issue further is Michael Moran, head of Interpol's Crimes Against Children Unit, and Peter Saunders, Chief Executive of NAPAC, a UK-based charity which provides support for people abused in childhood. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the front line. Mick Moran, we heard in this report that toddlers and babies are getting abused. What's going on?
Well, child sexual abuse exists within society. That's a fact. It's just the proliferation of the technology now, the ease at which we can all use digital cameras, digital high-definition video cameras. It means that there's more and more child sexual abuse being recorded. An unfortunate fact is that pre-speech children are preferred in those environments because pre-speech children cannot disclose. Pre-speech children can't tell on you, basically can't say what's happening to them. They don't understand the sexual context of what's happening to them.
Are the crimes becoming more violent?
It's a difficult call to make. Certainly, we see it on the complete spectrum. We see everything from just nakedness and exploitation, exploitative images, right the way up to bondage and sadomasochism being carried out on children of all ages.
Peter Saunders, you were abused as a child. you now help victims of abuse. What impact psychologically does it have on a child to be sexually abused and then have those images distributed on the internet?
It's now well established that the consequences of all forms of abuse actually are terribly, terribly debilitating for the victim. But the proliferation and the use of images, particularly through the internet, seems to add another level of degradation, if you like, that many victims will suffer from and suffer with for many decades to come, I fear.
Well, because we're seeing that a lot of this is taking place in the home. So can we extrapolate from this that it's family members who are committing this abuse and then posting it online?
It's a whole range of offending. It's father or grandfather or stepfather. Most people who abuse children tend to be trusted and known by the child, and I think that just again adds to the tragedy of it.
How much money's made from this?
The vast majority of this material is shared like for like. This is not a money-driven business. The vast majority of this exchange, the currency is pain. The currency is the pictures of the kids. The currency is the movies. The more information around the child makes it more valuable. You know, you see a toddler coming in from school with their school bag on and having their tea in the kitchen is just as valuable to these people as the actual penetrative sex carried out later on them. That series of abuse, and each abusive occasion forms part of a series, and we swap like for like, and that's the currency out there.
Women? Are women ever involved in this, or is this predominantly a male crime?
It's predominantly a male crime, but it's a fool who would say that women are not involved.
Yes, many women do abuse, and at NAPAC we hear from people who have been abused by females, and often it's the hardest thing, particularly if it's a male victim, for that person to speak about. And I have to say that some of the most vicious people in terms of, say, the physical abuse that we've heard about has been perpetrated by mum. And again, that's one that most of us would find really hard to sort of grapple with. But it's something that we hear of, that women can inflict dreadful pain and suffering on their offspring.
Let's pause now and listen to Elena Martellozzo, who's a criminologist at Middlesex University.
I feel children are at risk because their life online is not discussed within the family. And often parents use the internet as a kind of a babysitter. They think that their children are safe because they're upstairs in their bedroom, but it's not always the case.
What I don't understand is how can a child be being manipulated for sex under their parents' noses? How are these people grooming kids?
The point is that it's a strategy. You know, a child will be groomed, vulnerabilities will be exploited by the person over text and chat. And the child will be convinced perhaps to show their breasts, if it's a female child, to show their breasts in the camera. And once that happens then, the strategy will change from being treating the child to threatening the child. So now if we don't go any further, now what next thing we're going to deal with is that picture of you with your breasts exposed is going onto all your Facebook contacts, it's going onto I'm going to send it to the principal in your school, I'm going to send it to your mother, and then it just gets worse and worse. And I've 4 or 5 documented cases from all over Europe where that strategy has been put in place and has gone so far as to get this child to abuse another child, perhaps a sibling or a friend, or, you know.
Okay, Peter Saunders, this is supply and demand. Who wants to look at this?
Well, you ask me that, I don't know. What I do know is that there are millions of people out there who abuse children. It's a sick societal evil problem that's gone on for generations, and we're just talking about a different manifestation of it now with the internet.
Do European police forces cooperate with you adequately in trying to target abusers, those who are distributing these images, basically the criminals?
There's no country in Europe, that has a grip of this, that is dealing with this properly. There's no country in Europe can deal with all of the volume of offending that's out there.
Do some countries deal with it better than others?
Countries, of course, some countries are better than others.
Which ones?
I'm not at liberty to state that. What I am at liberty to state is that you know, stuff like the EU directive on child exploitation, stuff like the Global Alliance, all being, you know, these are initiatives at a very high level that shows high level support within Europe, within nations themselves to deal with this issue.
Why can there not be the level of transparency to be able to say that some countries, and name the countries, which aren't doing what they're doing?
I'm not going to name any country because it wouldn't be fair to name any country.
Why
but what I
wouldn't
will
it be
say,
fair?
what I will state to you very clearly is that there is no European country that's on top of this issue. Not one single country.
We have a new EU directive which is going to come into law across the member states at the end of this year to protect children. How is it going to affect your work? How's it going to help you?
I believe it's a brilliant directive. I believe it will move the investigation of this crime type and the responsibility for what's happening out there on the internet. It'll bring it to the forefront of people's minds, of everybody's minds, and it deals with it on a societal scale, from a victim's perspective, from a parent's perspective, from a policing perspective, from a political perspective. It brings it all into one place whereby it can get the attention it deserves.
And then finally, for the parents out there, for people who look after kids, briefly, a few pointers as to what they can do to protect their children.
Keep a very close eye on what your children are looking at. Have your computer or their computer in a living space. Don't let them have it in the bedroom. Talk to your children. Make sure that they have no secrets. And we have to, whether we like it or not, without going too far and wanting to sort of affect the innocence of our children, we have to talk to our children and educate our children that if anything is happening in their life that they feel vaguely uncomfortable about, that they can speak out. In the same way that survivors are now speaking out, we want our young people to know that they can speak out, and then offenders will start to think before they act, perhaps.
Gentlemen, many thanks for this discussion.
Thank you.
As we've already mentioned, those subjected to sexual abuse online are getting younger. At least 9% of the victims reported in 2012 were infants. That's an increase of a third from the previous year. Do you think enough is being done to eradicate this kind of material online? You can contact us via social media. We're keen to hear your thoughts. We return next month.